Today on Between the Lines, a tale of genius, madness, and greed, when we look at the two different worlds of Wall Street and Main Street with my guest, William Pack. I'm Barry Kibrick. William Pack was born in small-town Montana to a family plagued with difficulties. At 15, he left home to be on his own. By 21, he was a broker in a major Wall Street firm and quickly rose to become an executive vice president of the world's largest financial institution. Now, with his first novel, The Bottom of the Sky, William brings the two worlds of Wall Street and Main Street together in a tale that deals with shame, sacrifice, and greed, all within a journey of hidden destiny.
But I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
You don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and this is the first thing to do.
William, welcome to the show. It's glad to have you as a guest on Between the Lines with your first novel, The Bottom of the Sky. And since it is a novel and yet so pertinent to what's going on today, I'm going to discuss it as real, but I want you to give us a little bit of an author's blurb, if you'd like, and I'll help fill it in as well.
Well, when I set about writing the novel, I wanted to write about abuse of power, and so the novel begins in rural Montana in the late 1960s. You meet brother and sister, and it follows them until they're about 40 years old. One of them stays behind. They've been victims of abuse of power. The other one goes to Wall Street in Silicon Valley and sees examples of abuse of power on many different levels. And when I set about writing the story, I wanted to illuminate that abuse of power takes place in a lot of venues.
But you know, just before we went on, and I stopped you because I said I didn't want to talk about anything that I might want to discuss about. Right. And I couldn't believe how relevant the material is, though, to our modern situation right now.
Yes, I was a senior executive on Wall Street. I domiciled in Silicon Valley, so I had a lot of dealings with Silicon Valley and the kind of epicenter of technology. But yeah, I saw things. I mean, you see the kind of abuses of power that take place, and it's important to say here that, like all industries, most people in both of those places, in the implied industries, are good people. But when you have a phenomenal amount of money and opportunity, it will light the fuse of greed in a lot of people. So, but you know, in regards to the financial parts of that have now come to pass, in regards to it seeming prescient, in some ways, I guess it was, but I think that there are, you know, in regards to the economy falling apart, I think that everybody in the room, so to speak, at senior levels, and really not even, in some cases, not even at senior levels, could see that the math didn't work. You know, it's like growing a watermelon on a toothpick. You know, it might start out okay, but it's going to get to a certain size, it's going to fall over. It was just so staggeringly profitable that everyone stayed in the game, and most of it wasn't illegal. Was it unethical or immoral? You know, that's another judgment. So,
well, let's talk about, as we go, in fact, we're going to fill in all the characters. Briefly, I'll tell that there's a character, Levi, who's our hero to some extent. Mm-hmm. His father, mother, and sister play a role in this, and of course, all the people in business. And you do see how the power and abuse of on a micro level,
right,
the individual level, then expands out to being on the macro level. Society is abused with this power, and money is coming in, and we don't know where to go with it. So a lot of our discussion is going to fill up with that information, and I want to begin with your dedication even, because in almost every book, when I see a dedication, it usually is to someone or something. Mm-hmm. Yours is different. I want to read yours and get your take on it. For the righteous who endure, and for those who cannot, for the courageous truth speakers, for the kind. That's who the book is dedicated to.
Right. Yeah, I think that when you examine abuse of power on very personal levels, and you examine it on macro levels that ultimately end up being very personal levels, you realize that there are people, you know, abuse of power implies that there's a victim. There are victims out there. Some of them are strong. Some of them can stand up. Some of them can reclaim themselves. Some of them are not, and never do end up reclaiming themselves. And I think that partly I wanted to dedicate it to them as well. And it's important to stand up and speak the truth. I think you have to thank the people who do that regardless. And in the end, you know, by the time that we all have that last day on earth, it's about who you love and who loved you and what you did actively. And that's about kindness. And I think that ultimately, regardless of how strong a person is, how powerful they are, how assertive they are, all of those things are okay if they're done with kindness.
You know, you have sort of a small character, but with the big words, Lily, who I believe she was the one whose parents were in internment camps
Right.
in Japanese, in the Japanese War, and they were out here. And she's looking over a Purple Heart, and the inscription on the back reminds me of just what you said. It says, "If in loyalty lies honor, must one sacrifice honor for loyalty?" The answer, in loyalty, honor, but never honor for loyalty. This is, again, one of the big dilemmas that these characters are facing, because there's loyalty to their firm, there's loyalty to their family, yet there are certain honorable things that must be done.
Right. And I think that's absolutely true. And this issue of family can come in a lot of different forms, and it can come, for people who do nothing but work, maybe it's their corporate family, but for most of it's family we're thinking about people we're related to or people that we choose to be part of our family. Early in the book, it asks the question about which is more important, the individuals in a family or the family itself. And this whole issue of in loyalty, honor and loyalty, the juxtaposition of honor and loyalty. The fact is that the book reaches a conclusion. But it's very difficult for some people to act with honor if they feel they're being disloyal to the very base of their existence, of their psychological existence, maybe even of their physical existence, if this is the family that takes care of them. What happens when you have a fundamentally loyal person who's also fundamentally honest, who is faced with that decision?
Well, you know, I couldn't help but expand that thought and kept thinking what you have is the American Revolution. Because that's what really transpired. You
Right.
had a loyalty to Mother England,
Right.
but an honor to know that that loyalty was corrupting the human spirit. And it was against all that was being learned in the Enlightenment. And I couldn't help but
Right.
again see, that's nowhere in the book, I know, but I was making that own parallel as I was reading through it, because I remember how difficult it was for the loyalists to become the revolutionists.
Well, and when the Loyalists first stood up, they were greatly persecuted. Obviously, there was a war that developed out of this, and they were in a small minority. You know, when you have excesses that take place, whether they're within the confines of a home or whether they're on Wall Street or whether they're in Silicon Valley, when the people with honor who are loyal to the honor first stand up, they are going to be persecuted. They are going to be shot. They are going to be thrown out. And it's not until after the smoke clears that you look back and you decide who the heroes are.
Well, you know, you foreshadow this in the very beginning when you talk about Roundup, Montana, which is where the young Levi is going to then leave and take off into the Wall Street and Silicon Valley world.
Right.
But you talk about the men and women, and I want to read this because it struck a chord with me. They drank, the men, and stayed married to resilient women of practical grace. And here's where I think the big difference between the honor and loyalty comes in.